Labvakar. So, I straight away start in English. Thank you for coming. So you have been invited to a lecture tonight, and thank you for coming. And I have special thanks for Yanis, Valda, Christine, and Liba. Liba is not here. Liba is our daughter, and she doesn't know, but I will, let's say, dedicate all my thoughts of tonight for her. Actually, this is the reason why I'm here. It's, I think, is very connected with Liba, my daughter, and actually our daughter. If I think about Cēsu Universitāte, if I hear the name Cēsu Universitāte, I think it's very connected to her story more than my story. Like if Yanis has planned a very long-term program and has a long-term ambition for Cēsu Universitāte, I will see very little of it, and our children will see much more of it. I normally don't do that, but I had to write my text, at least for a very short part to warm up myself. So I was talking about my daughter. I woke up this morning beside her. We sleep in the same bed. Plus Christina was not in Cēsu, so I had my daughter all by myself. We had breakfast together, and then I brought her to kindergarten, and we got late because she wanted to sleep. I also wanted to sleep. I feel very tired today. I had to prepare this lecture. It's always like that with me. I end up very late at night doing things that I should do during the day. I hope one day at least one school in the world will only work by night, so that that has the same conditions as I have can also attend those courses. Let's see, maybe one day. So by 2050, which is one of the dates that the Cēsu Universitāte is looking at and trying to learn from this date, which we don't know much about 2050, but still the idea of Cēsu Universitāte is also to somehow taking into consideration there's a world waiting for us in 2050. We should try to imagine it or being inspired by those numbers, and then set up a university with that perspective. So thinking about Liba, I'm both excited and worried. I'm excited because like watching a child growing up and learning is a very beautiful and meaningful process. And I'm also worried because I'm quite pessimistic about the future, and I believe in next years is going to be not so easy actually to live around here. But I'm not going to tell, I don't want to tell sad stories tonight. It's written down. It's like, but I'm not here to tell sad stories. I would like that we remember tonight as not as a lecture, but as a gathering. And it's very important that it happens in Cēsis. There's been a lot of gatherings in Cēsis specifically. I mean, there's been a lot of conferences and lectures and panel discussions. There's a festival of Saruna festivals. I mean, gathering for me has a very important meaning, and it sparks from the idea that there's a community in Cēsis that is forming and I've seen it forming under my eyes the past 5 years while I was living here. And so in this gathering, I also would like to invite you to take part, also talking. When I was preparing this today, I sort of divided in my head 2 parts. One part where I will mainly talk, and one part where I hopefully will mainly listen. The title we chose for this lecture is, you can see it here, it's Cēsu Universitāte, you add anything you like here. And that really was the task that Jānis gave me. We more or less knew what would be the content, but then he wrote me an email, well, the title we're going to give to the lecture is going to be Cēsu Universitāte, and then you add anything you like here. And there's few reasons why I left it that way. One thing, definitely I know, I'm lazy. That's like, you need to know that. But then also it reminded me a line in a manifesto, which is a Bruce Mau manifesto for the incomplete manifesto for growth. I will finally move this. Let's go to the second slide. This is an incomplete picture of the incomplete manifesto for growth, and I point you at the number 17. And most likely you will not be able to read, so I will just read for you. Intentionally left blank. And this is a bit the same idea that you add anything you like here. It's part of laziness, a part of keeping the door open for anything that can happen tonight. And I think I want to try an experiment later with you, to involve you in also the talking part, and of all matters, of all things I could have added there, I chose to focus this evening on people, or maybe community, or human beings, with the maybe the aim or the hope that to find some more questions about who should be the student of Cēsu Universitāte, and then questioning that, we should also question who are the other parts of who could be the other parts of Cēsu Universitāte, which are maybe teachers, administrators, many people that can collaborate, will collaborate, or will pay for it, both private and public. And when I say student, it's a bit strange, because I feel there's a big difference between studying and learning. I try to get a grasp on these two words and try to understand what they meant in my maybe career or my life. Because I believe we start learning from very early, the very early days, and then we keep learning till the very last days. It's not the same for studying. With studying, it's if I think about our daughter, she definitely learned in 5 years a lot of things, and they are visible. She is walking, she is talking, she can read letter by letter, she can even write something, she can ride a bike, she can scream and run. But I don't think, I mean, she's 5 and I don't think she ever studied anything. So it's, in that sense, when setting up any educational institution, yeah, that's where I would start to ask one of the first questions, whether we want a university where we can study or a university where we can learn. And I think the challenge I want to launch for Cēsu Universitāte is to build a university where you learn. Study, it feels like an invention. We were not born most likely with the idea or the need for studying. Definitely we were learning. Animals learn, and children. There's now machines that learn. And that's a bit the strange thing, because machine can, for me, we say machine learning, but then they study a lot. They can study very fast and very quickly. About learning is, I'm not sure they are really learning. First page. Thank you. F2. And also at this point, talking about studying and learning, I must say that I have enrolled in 5 universities, like been having the passport of 5 universities. Maybe the reason for my hunger for university was lays in this saying by Frank. Do you know Frank Zappa? Was a musician, and he used to say that. I'll read again. If you want to get laid, meaning if you want to hook up with a girl or a boy, you go to college. If you want an education, go to the library. And actually, my last semester at university was during my diploma of architecture at UDK in Berlin. I actually did spend most of that semester in a library in Berlin. It was, it's called Volkswagen Universität, the library. And it's the central library for the both technical and the artistic university. So they have a lot of resources. And it turned out they had an amazing amount of books about artists, mainly monographies. And well, I don't even remember why, but I once was there and started to look at some monographies, and then I started with letter A, and then I systematically continue from A till, I mean, the idea was to go from A to Z and then go through all the books of artists. So at letter D, it took me approximately 4 or 5 months to go through all the books from letter A till letter D. Actually, I thought I put this slide. I didn't, but I was taking notes of this. So this is at letter B. I was taking notes from all these books. Of course, I was not reading from page 1 to page end. I was going very oblique and going very fast. But still, I mean, if something would take my attention, I would stay on a book for a longer time. And so at letter D, the experience stopped because I was thrown out of university. and then I couldn't finish it. And I was thrown out for a very simple and also predictable reason, which my level of German was below the what was needed to have to pass a degree. And I said, okay, I mean, can't do anything. I tried 2 tests, and then I failed, and then they told me bye. But the funny thing is that most of those books were in English, and then most of the professors and lectures were in English, and it felt a bit funny, just funny. But it still doesn't feel like a failure that much of not finishing university. Yeah, it was 5 universities, something like 8-9 years of university courses. In the end, I got 2 bachelors, but not a master. And I feel that I was spending most of my time studying and very little of it learning, at least that was the feeling back then. Trying to understand it now has a different meaning, but that was the feeling, that you study a lot of even ideas and disciplines and even dates and data, but what I keep today is quite limited. And actually, what I lacked the most was to learn a few skills that then some of which I started to learn outside the walls of universities, which are, maybe I wrote them down if I remember. It's these are things that at some point you get to cross path with, but there's no courses in university to learn empathy or curiosity or creativity. And this is another challenge I launched to Cēsu Universitātes, is that that's what I mean by learning is how can you set up gatherings or even lectures or events where you experiment these ideas or skills. I will take a little break, not a break, a pause of thoughts to remind you that we are in a very special place tonight. It's Sākuma skola. What is? Pamatskola, sorry. And there's few rooms around where there is maybe there are these boards on the walls, and I'll try to make a very long stretch to link what I said before with this picture. In Italian, letter A is not apple. We don't have that. It's like mela with the M. So we never had that. But apple and apples is the same. It makes it's a bit funny to think that in all the pamatskolas, at least in Latvia and maybe in some English-speaking countries, like the first letter they learn is A, and the first word they connect with it is apple. I can't talk much about the apple in itself, just to remind us that how spread is one thing that so many people learn the same way. And there's few TED videos, TED conference video by Sir Ken Robinson, which has very compelling videos about education, where he states that education at the moment has this industrial, like follows an industrial system instead of looking at an agricultural system, and he hopes for this turn into education where, or a revolution in education where we go from this model to a more organic model. And looking at this, I also remember another story or an anecdote of a moment I had in university where during a class, I mean, everybody in the class had to present some homework. We had 1 week to prepare, so every week we had these homeworks to present. And then it looked like she was unhappy with my homework because the professor told me it really looks like you didn't spend any time on it or very little time, and look at the others in the class, they did a lot of work. Why you did not work as much? And then I said, well, that week I was working more than usual because at that period, in that period, I had to also work outside university. And then I got this comment that marked me very strongly, and this was France, and maybe here or in other parts it's usual that students can also work beside studying. And she said, she basically told me that if I wanted to be there, I shouldn't work. And it was quite, and the connection with A is that she basically disagreed with me on the fact that maybe I was not producing as much, but I was doing, well, in other moments of my career, I was producing. And this comes back a bit to this, what I learned studying is that professors often ask for the same, they give tasks that are spread evenly, and most of them pretend or hope for an even outcome. Which is a big challenge for whatever kind of school or university. It's how can you make the education personal, so that I mean, first of all talents are touched upon, and also, I don't know, I think personal rhythms can work within an institution like that. When I say that I would like to see one day a university open by night only, is that maybe at some point someone will make one, or maybe there is, I don't know. I didn't look too much into that. But this is my last slide, and well, it takes inspiration from the previous slide, and it's not an acronym. It doesn't stand for Alberto is something. See you. But there is see you. I'll talk about see you. No, I just, it's a pun. I don't know if you know what's a pun. But maybe you can, there's missing letters and then you have to complete it to make sense of it. But it's also something that, so you don't need to look at it too long, you can look at me. And I will talk about these letters. Maybe not too much. I mean, Apple I've already done. There's a very long lecture by a philosopher, Jacques Derrida, which is, well, the title is Différence, but he's talking a lot about letter A. And I beg you to find a copy of it online and read it. There must be English version. Because really, out of a letter, you can tell so many things that I should just stay with you here in front of these letters and then wait some 2-3 hours. That's the durational performance I wanted to try tonight, which I will not. I will not. A stands also for Agamben, which is another philosopher which I had the pleasure to encounter in my studies, but too early. That's another challenge for universities, and is very connected with whom should go to universities, both students and professors, because Agamben is apparently one of the most important living philosophers in Italy, at least. He's known for a thing that maybe not many know, but biopolitics. And so we had a lecture with him, I think the first or second year of university. I was 21 as like my colleagues, and nobody knew who he was, and still like we were going there. It was very strange to hear him talking, and no one was understanding anything. He had this lecture on ethics, which nobody knew what it was. It was actually almost like an art academy, and we had like this figure there. So in that sense, what I want to stress out is that sometimes to have good professors is not always the best if you don't have people listening to that professor. Like for me, looking back, it was a waste, because he could have taught somewhere else where people had some how do you say, some background to soak what he was talking about. Then in the end, I bought a lot of books, read a lot, and then still don't understand almost anything of what he's saying. But he's super famous. Then the other letter, I, stands for I myself, and there's another challenge for an like educational institution is where how can you foster, or how can you cultivate both identities and also individuals in an individual way, or trying to let the individuals develop their own, at their own rhythm, with their own even language. But it also, you can read it AI, and was not the purpose here of these letters, but like in 2050, I can only imagine, but I mean, artificial intelligence will most likely be the next, I don't know, event in technology, like has been the iPhone. And it will most likely change a lot of things in an educational system where machines will be able to study much faster than we can do, and maybe even learn those skills I wrote down, or maybe not. But it's still, I think, I'm not saying much tonight, but I want to mention it as something that is coming, and it's we should take it into account. And then C is it stands for community. It's Agamben, the philosopher, wrote this one of the books I could read and understand a little bit, tiny bit, the coming community, so the CC, where he, where he talks about the planetarian, a planetarian small bourgeoisie that is forming, and where classes will not be actual anymore, and this coming of a community, or coming to a zero level of society can have both a destructive and unique impact. Destructive because if we consider it a degree zero of society, then maybe we can't call it anymore a society where like everybody has the same level of non-existence. Thank you. Bye. I will not talk about this. So C also stands for thesis, and we have the great opportunity here to still make mark, and not just with the university, but with many things that will come together with it. The idea, one of the words I remember the most from Yannis' lecture is when he mentioned the thesis as a campus, and then I straight away thought, oh, CC, it's going to be a cool logo. Sorry, I like very much this logo, and if you want later we can discuss about it. Maybe there's no need, but I mean, CC for me was a very interesting way of calling the thesis campus, also because it, if you Google it, I didn't, but most likely there will be this Creative Commons license coming up, and yeah, it's a communal collaboration in licensing softwares, but also products. And then but there's also CU. But CU is at the end. Actually, U stands sure for university, and I think we discussed a little bit what should be this institution or school called, and then Yannis decided it's going to be Cēsu Universitātes, and although I still have, I mean, I got used to it. I before had some, I liked CC better, but university or Universitāte stands for people, and this is maybe whether campus stands for or indicates a location or a ground or a place. So in this sense, it probably fits better the idea of Universitāte. But then U stands also can stand for utopia. And I will not go into detail about utopia, but I kind of feel that Cēsu is, at least in my experience, is kind of something like an utopia. There's a book by Thomas More called Utopia, and it's an island. And sometimes Cēsu feels like an island, which is like in the middle of the countryside, or a mesh, or a forest, and then a bit far from bigger other clusters, not clusters, towns. And yeah, sometimes it feels to me as an island, and but utopia has a good meaning as well. Like here, really can dream and experiment. I mean, the book from Thomas More, Utopia, is about having an island where there's a lot of experiments going on, and they have their own rules, and there's governments, and then it's very different from what we know of running a state or a nation. But then it's also ICU later, because we take a break. Sorry to be very abrupt closing this first part of the lecture, but I see you later. We take some 5-minute break, and then before you leave, I want to do an experiment. Well, I want to have a discussion, or to take part into a discussion with you, and where I will try to focus our efforts and the questions about the people who should attend Cēsu Universitāte,